Hi guys, welcome back. Welcome back. So as I said in the last video, I'm gonna split last year up into 3 parts because it was a difficult year, I'm not gonna lie. At the time I really didn't want to film anything because it was just too raw and too emotional and too private to share. I'm not going to be sharing the entire lot on here, but just snippets. If you can hear snoring, that's Dory, so I apologise in advance. Sound wise, I'm trying to do this with my AirPods in this time in the hopes that it will give you better sound quality, because the last one was terrible. I do apologise. So anyway, as you know, I left Portugal at the beginning of 2024 in January. I left Portugal in January 2024. When I knew I was coming back, I knew I would need somewhere to live, and that having the cats and the dog would cause issues with trying to find private rented, and knew that council would not be an option. So I bought a boat. I'm going to call this boat the Green Boat. Sorry. I'm going to call this boat the Green Boat, and I will pop a picture of it here. So I bought this boat unseen over the internet. I paid a deposit. The balance was due to be paid on the day that I arrived back in the UK, when I went up there to move on to the boat. Seller seemed decent enough, gave me a receipt, had no issues, sent me all of the things I'd asked for. So I paid the deposit, and that was that. I set forward with getting everything sorted, getting myself ready to move back, overloading my poor little Ford Fiesta, and driving the 1500 miles back to the UK. Took me 2 days, and then another 12 hours or so on the ferry overnight, including waiting time to get on it, etc. And then I landed in Portsmouth. Messaged the guy to say that I'd landed, and the sat-nav was telling me 4.5 hours, and that I would see him around lunchtime. So I set off, drove up there, met the guy. Boat was okay, wasn't as I'd imagined it would be from the photos that had been shown, but it would do. It needed more work doing to it than I really wanted to do, but it would do. So paid him the balance, moved all of my stuff on there, and started thinking about what I could do to make this boat home. Unfortunately, at that precise moment, the gods decided to throw a heap load of snow down, drop the temperatures down to absurdly low, and living in a boat with no insulation and condensation dripping from the roof onto you in the middle of the night was not fun. It did have a wood burner in it, and I did try to light this wood burner, but unfortunately all it did was just belch smoke out into the cabin. Made it unbearable. You couldn't see, you couldn't breathe, and so I couldn't use it. I had no other form of heating, and I was in an awful lot of pain at the time, and knew that the pain was only going to get worse. So decided to see if there was any other way I could find another boat in my price range for the money that I had left in my savings account, and then either do this boat up gradually and sell it, or just sell it as it was, as a project again. So I scoured the internet, scoured Facebook, scoured everything, and managed to find this other boat, which I'm going to call the Blue Boat. So I found this Blue Boat, spoke to the guy, went up to see it. The photos he'd posted of it were of it before there was a storm. There was a storm that had happened a couple of days before I got to the UK, and the guy didn't realise that the storm had damaged the canopy of the boat. So when I got there, obviously the canopy was damaged. I'll put some photos in here to show you. And as such, he dropped a lot of money off the price. So it meant that I wasn't completely empty in my bank account. I would have a few £100 left to live on for a while. So we agreed a price. I paid the guy the money. He handed it over. We signed it over. Everything okay. And I came back to the green boat and loaded up the car again. Moved into the Blue Boat. Settled myself in. Blue Boat was great. It had no heating, but at least it had a gas cooker, and I was able to turn the gas cooker on just to take the chill off, and it was a little bit warmer because it had been insulated anyway, so it was a bit better. But with a 50 odd mile drive between the two boats, I decided that doing up the green boat wasn't an option, so I put it up for sale. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Cut a long story short, I had a text telling me the boat had been stolen, the green boat. Phoned the police, drove down there to meet the police. They started investigating and then found out that the boat hadn't been stolen. The boat had been taken by its rightful owner. The guy had actually sold the boat to someone else before me, but because they'd asked him if they could leave it there till the end of February, he decided to sell it again to me. So here I was, no boat, and now £2,500 out of pocket. The policeman told me to register everything with Action Fraud, but Action Fraud absolutely useless. They did nothing, absolutely nothing. So cue a month of me living in complete panic because I'd come back to the UK, so I couldn't sign on because I'd been out of the country for 4 years. I had managed to get myself a job, part-time job, so it wasn't too bad, but said part-time job was paying monthly, and I needed to get through that month of fuel and food and everything else. And I'd only had like a couple of £100 left in the bank after I'd bought the Blue Boat. So I was panicking. I'm not going to lie, I was panicking. I did contact the bank, and thankfully I'd gone through Barclays for this payment, and they were amazing. It did take them a month because they had to wait for the police report to come through from the police officer. He sent that all off to them, and thankfully I think it was middle of March, about a week after I'd been paid from my job, I got the money back, which was brilliant. So it wasn't too bad in the end. Turned out not too bad. I was able to use some of that money to buy a new car because the Portuguese car, I was only allowed to use that over here for 3 months, and then I had to dispose of it. So I was able to buy a new car, which was great because that had a heater. And so that was basically the first 4 months of my life back in the UK. Was quite stressful and apart, but you know, once that was sorted, it wasn't too bad. Life on the boat was great. Didn't quite like the very early mornings to get up to do the hour's drive to go to work, but there you go. At least it was money coming in. And I thought, brilliant, all sorted. Everything's okay. You know, was going to think about starting up the YouTube channel again and letting you guys in on the life on the boat. And that was all going okay. So that's where I'm going to end it for this week, because we're already at 11 minutes or so. So that's where I'm going to end it for this week. So that's the first third of the year for you, and I will update you next week on the next third, and then you'll see just why I didn't post anything last year and didn't respond to anything last year, and why last year was probably the worst year of my life. Anyway, bye for now.